Hello and welcome to Daybreak. I'm Snigdha.
And I'm Rahil.
And in this episode, we'll be talking about the unraveling of ride hailing platform Blusmart, the private banking and wealth management boom in India, and finally, how India's ad agencies got raided over alleged price fixing 3 days before the country's biggest marketing event, the IPL.
Back in 2019, when it was launched, Blusmart Mobility did the unthinkable. It took on the Ola-Uber duopoly headfirst by breaking all the rules in the ride-hailing playbook. First, this homegrown startup decided to have an entirely electric fleet. Then it ditched the usual aggregator model and opted for the full stack approach, where it chose to lease all of its vehicles directly. Add to that zero cancellations and no surge pricing, and you have a sure shot disruptor. And disrupt it did. In many ways, it redefined urban mobility in India and paved the way for a bunch of newer players to enter the scene. But today, the environmentally conscious commuter's favorite airport taxi is in some serious trouble. I'm resisting the urge to use a driving pun and say that Blusmart has hit a bump on the road because that would be a massive understatement. The first sign of trouble emerged when the company decided to shut down its Dubai operations earlier this month. Then reports suggested that Uber had entered early discussions to acquire the company, a claim that Blusmart has categorically denied. But in the middle of all of this, top executives started to resign one after the other. This week, multiple news organizations reported that the company's CEO Anirudh Arun, Chief Business Officer Tushar Garg, CTO Rishabh Sood, and VP of Experience Priyanka Chakravarti have all stepped down. This exodus started soon after Blusmart announced that it was restructuring its operations, a rather vague statement made by many companies when they run into hard times financially. In Blusmart's case, a big part of this puzzle is Gensol Engineering, its parent company. Now, the Blusmart-Gensol relationship is very Game of Thrones. One of the founders of Blusmart, Anmol Singh Jaggi, is also the chairman and managing director of 12-year-old Gensol, which is a listed company that builds solar farms and leases out electric cars. And the connection doesn't just end there. A majority of the 8,000 cars in Blusmart's fleet are leased from Gensol. Gensol's EVs actually account for about 2/3 of its fleet. And it makes sense, right? One company needs EVs, one has them in abundance. It's the perfect synergy. Except, we all know that there is a flip side to overdependence. And that's exactly what is playing out now with Blusmart and Gensol. You see, Gensol has been going through a rough time financially. Recently, 2 rating agencies downgraded its credit rating. Not only was it accused of delayed debt payments, one rating agency also alleged it had falsified documents. So naturally, that sent its stock on a tailspin. The company was stuck between a rock and a hard place. It desperately needed liquidity. So what does it decide to do? Wind down its existing lease arrangements. Simply put, it decided to sell thousands of EVs. The catch here is that the nearly 3,000 EVs it is selling to Chennai-based Reflex Green Mobility represent 34% of Blusmart's total fleet. Eventually, the deal is reportedly that Reflex will lease these cars back to Blusmart. But the transaction is still pending regulatory approvals. The company insists that these operational restructuring decisions won't impact its ride-hailing services. But that only time will tell. You see, a revision in the leasing terms to bring them in line with the rest of the market would mean a significant increase in costs. So far, Blusmart has been paying less than what Gensol's other customers have to lease its cars, but now it will be brought in line with the rest of the market. And that will cut deep, especially considering Blusmart's losses have widened considerably year on year. The bottom line is, the Blusmart-Gensol relationship may have served the ride-hailing app well in its early years, but now it is proving costly for both companies involved. Sure, it's perfectly fine for a listed company to do business with an entity it has a stake in or a firm owned by the promoters. But ideally, transactions between them should be at an arm's length, meaning the two related parties should deal with each other as they would with unrelated ones. That is, the terms should be such that each entity protects its own interest and that of all of its shareholders. To survive, it is imperative for Blusmart and Gensol to restructure their partnership. And that will mean Blusmart raising more capital and Gensol diversifying its client base. Coming up next, how it's time for private bankers and wealth managers to shine in India.
Last year, India minted a new billionaire every 5 days. This is according to Huron India's rich list. We have more than 300 of them and counting as of now. And by next year, our country is expected to have more than 1.5 million millionaires. Now, all of these ultra high net worth individuals are looking for trustworthy, personalized, and high quality investment and asset management advice from professionals. Which is why India has suddenly popped up on the radar of wealth management companies from around the world. The likes of UBS Group, HSBC are all lining up, and Indian lenders are not far behind either. HDFC, ICICI, IndusInd have all been working on expanding their private banking offerings. My colleague Ronak Kumar Gunjan spoke to two private bankers, one who works with Citibank, now merged with Axis Bank, and another from HSBC. Both told him that private bankers have never been in so much demand. They told him how back in the day, private banking was mostly a thing for foreign banks. So, in terms of career growth, the job was pretty limited. People would suggest moving to retail banking instead. But now everybody is after private bankers and they are paying really, really well, way more than regular banking jobs. But if you think private bankers can take it easy because they are in demand, well, you're not quite right. Because to get good business, they need to build trust. And building trust doesn't just mean giving great financial advice. It also means being accessible anytime and anywhere and also catering to the whims and fancies of the rich. Like one of the bankers told Ronak how he received frantic calls from his client at 3 a.m. one night because they had some doubts about their money and wanted the banker to resolve them immediately. And the expectations do not stop there. In one instance, a wealth manager told my colleague Nuha how he had to arrange concert tickets for his client. Another had to use their contacts to pre book a luxury car for their client. The banker also explained to Ronak how they have to keep an eye on global markets based on where their client has investments. And that means when a market opens in a certain country, they have to be awake and ready. On top of that, there are long meetings with senior private bankers, business heads, and colleagues to discuss macro trends and figure out which clients to focus on. Plus, Indian clients have this thing of wanting to meet their private bankers in person. The reasons are obvious. It's just better for them to trust somebody that they have met in real life. And a big part of the job is not just preserving wealth, but also making it grow. Sometimes the strategy extends even further, up to 20 to 30 years, where asset protection and succession planning becomes crucial. In fact, succession planning has been in high demand, especially among Indian clients recently who want to secure their family wealth for future generations. So, 80 to 100-hour work weeks have become the norm for these bankers. But long hours are just the beginning. Clients are looking at them as the guardians of their money. And with the kinds of amounts involved, there is no room for mistakes. Coming up next, the IPL ad fiasco.
Online advertising is brutal. It is a jungle out there. And just like the jungle, some beasts are at the top of the food chain. You've probably heard of some of them. Group M, Publicis, Dentsu, Madison, IPG. These are the ones who are bigger than everyone else and hold the accounts of some of the world's biggest advertisers. I'm talking Coca-Cola, Nike, Unilever. Just last week, Coca-Cola took away its North America media business from Group M and gave it to Publicis for a cool $700 million. In the jungle, these ad agencies aren't just big predators, they are giants. And last week, the Competition Council of India attacked all the giants all at once. Why? Well, in this week's episode of The Nut Graph, my colleague Praveen Gopal Krishnan explored just that. Here's a snippet from the show.
A lot of mysterious things have happened, but it's really unclear who caused it to happen. If this were a murder whodunit, it would be like if someone tore out the final pages that finally reveal the killer. I imagine this would be frustrating to you as a reader, but I'm being upfront that I don't really have a clear-cut answer. All I can promise is that I'll make the crime as interesting as I can and tell you who gains and who loses, and you can gauge the motives for yourself. Maybe there isn't one killer. Perhaps there are several. Or perhaps there are none. You decide. I'll start with the most exciting part, the murder itself. Here's the news from 2 days ago, as reported by Reuters, and the title of the story is India Raids Ad Giants Group M Publicis Broadcasters Group Over Price Collusion, Sources Say. And this is the relevant paragraph. Quote, the Indian antitrust body has raided the offices of many global advertising giants, including Group M, Publicis, Dentsu, and Interpublic Group, and the Broadcasters Industry Group over alleged price collusion. People with direct knowledge told Reuters on Tuesday. Officers of the Competition Commission of India searched around 10 locations after it initiated a case against the agencies and top broadcasters over allegedly fixing ad rates and discounts, said one of the sources. The raids were being carried out in Mumbai, New Delhi, and Gurgaon, the first source said. 5 other sources familiar with the ongoing antitrust operation confirmed the names of the entities being raided. The raids come as the ad landscape in India is seeing major shifts following the $8.5 billion merger between Walt Disney and Reliance's India media assets, which Jefferies analysts say will have a 40% share of the ad market in TV and streaming segments. End quote.
A link to the full episode will be in the show notes. Next up, my colleague Snigdha has a message for all of you.
Next Tuesday, Rahel will be talking to our reporter Abhirami about her story on the Bangalore water crisis. In the report, Abhirami investigated how the government's inability to solve the recurring problem has made way for private players to take over and monetize the water infrastructure of the city. If you have any opinions or questions on this issue, please send us a voice note or text us on our WhatsApp number. The best ones will get featured on the podcast and we will have Abhirami answer them. Our number is 89711 98379. And with that, it is a wrap. Thank you for tuning in and have a great weekend. Daybreak is produced from the newsroom of The Ken, India's first subscriber-focused business news platform. What you're listening to is just a small sample of our subscriber-only offerings.
A full subscription unlocks daily long-form feature stories, newsletters, and podcast extras. Head to theken.com and click on the red subscribe button on the top of the Ken website.
Today's episode was hosted and produced by Rahel Philippos and I, Snigdha Sharma, and it was edited by Rajiv Sien.